Hello. Good morning. I already went to the gym. Normally, I try to do stuff a little bit sooner. I have a little bit of time in the morning after sending the kids to school, but I was like, shoot, I'm feeling tired. And so I ended up going to the gym, where in which I still felt super tired, bros. I was so tired. Been staying up super late. It's not good for my health. Um, which makes me want to talk about something that I call art debt. Now, I've talked about this in mentorships, and I think maybe there's some in the Volt videos that I've put out, but this is a concept that I coined for folks that I found would run into this continuous perpetual challenge of like essentially having this feeling of um, like what do I do? What do I start? Like how do I make it in this business? And I get a lot of that, man. A lot of people I talk to are very distraught and unmotivated and really have a hard time with this concept. And honestly, it's fair. A lot of things are going on in the world. Again, I try not to stay too political. Generally speaking, I think it's just good for my mental health specifically. But I mean, think about it. There's clearly stuff going on in terms of the global economic crisis. Inflation affects everybody on this planet currently, and we all just are still trying to recover from the pandemic. And then what else? What else is going on? Oh yeah, there's like two major conflicts at a very large scale happening at the moment. Um, and then there are, you know, elected officials and essentially like unelected officials appears that people are really upset with. Whether you disagree with being upset about these things or not, like all of these have a cascading effect on our industry because if people aren't feeling up to it, they're not going to buy stuff, right? Because they're just feeling like um, they're feeling the pain. And as you start to see kind of the global economic debt grow, and something that we will all eventually have to deal with at some level, and it's not going to be great. I can't lie to you guys. It's going to be tough. But in regards to art, in which you guys do have control over, regardless of whatever's going on the outside world, um, you do have control over whether you can do something about your art stuff. And one of the pieces of advice I give to people is to think about it like art debt. You are collecting art debt. And what does art debt look like? Well, art debt is just like, you don't show up, you don't do paintings, you don't sketch, you don't try to learn something new within the art form, you don't build portfolio pieces, the list goes on, et cetera, et cetera. There's so many things to consider. And I just realized there's like a buzzsaw going on in my background. I have a feeling you guys cannot hear it at all, but I do. And so if you do hear it, I apologize, but it is what it is. We're not going back. We're going to continue this stream, this video. But anyway, just thought I'd mention that just in case some of you guys are like, what the hell is going on in the background? um, that's funny. I was on a call with a friend the other day, and he was like doing dishes, and like his noise canceling a feature on his phone just was not working, and I could just hear every little clinking clank. And it's like, yeah. And so I was thinking, and I'm like, oh my god, dude, this is too distracting. Uh, but I assume it's not the case for this. OBS is a pretty good noise canceling filter. Anyway, sorry, got distracted. Yeah, so if you don't do many of these things to pay your art bills, you will acquire art debt. Like again, if you don't, go out of your way to try to figure out how to draw, build portfolio pieces, study, practice, you name it. There's so many things to be working on. So if you have like all of this art debt, what I always tell people is what ends up happening is you have to pay that debt off eventually. And usually the way you pay it off is with depression, anxiety, frustration, remorse, regret, um, disappointment, etc., etc. And it's not great. I personally have felt these things in many aspects of my life, but art has been one of those things that I am absolutely pretty good about making sure I maintain. Like, I find ways to still be making something. Whether you see it or not, I am doing something. And as a consequence, I am always creating and innovating and doing stuff that really motivates individuals artistically, alongside just kind of what I've been up to. And I think what's really wonderful about making sure you're on top of this type of stuff is that you get paid in dividends. You get really good skills out of it, you know, and reputation and opportunities. And I feel that a lot of people don't see it this way. They're always like trying to think of, what am I doing wrong? And they hear other artists, which again, I think was rightfully fair to be critical of like like the current state of our industry. I think it's totally fair, but I've kind of been in and out of these moments throughout my entire career, and this definitely feels a bit different. But it's not like there aren't opportunities. There still are, you know. And I don't think that a lot of these people are wrong, though, to have these assumptions and these challenges in regards to their livelihoods. But, you know, I think that it is only going to last up until a point, and then it's going to bounce back. When it bounces back, I have no idea. But if you have not been paying your art bills this entire time, and when the opportunity does arise where the industry is a little bit more lucrative as once was, a little bit more booming startups are coming into the fray to bring on these new exciting projects to the industry that are going to do great. But you were under the heel of thinking the industry's fucked forever, or for whatever reason, like thinking that this is a lost cause. Then it's kind of like, the way I like to think about this is that, you know, if you were hoping for things to get easier, I have bad news for you. It's never been the case. You know, the industry has always been incredibly competitive. The industry has always been really challenging to get into. One of my students, actually, we were talking the other day, and they mentioned how they heard somebody was saying it's a lot easier to get into a different field within our industry, so it might be better to go do that. And I was like, it's hard to get into all of the fields. To assume you can pivot to quote unquote X art style or X genre of work, and thinking that that's just going to get you in the door, if the fundamental problem is that you just don't have an incredibly good portfolio that is challenging all this stuff, then it's not like, if you, for instance, like if you heard doing 3D is easier, I think that's true, but getting 3D jobs isn't just easy. Like, nobody can just do it. Like, you have to still be pretty competent and pretty incredible. Let's say environment art is easier to do than character art, but it's still hard to get into environment art. Like, it's not that it's easier in the sense of like it's easy, just as easy to maybe get like a fast food job, probably, right? It's not easy still. It's super hard. And perhaps it's easier. I actually don't think that that's a problem to think this way, but it's not easy still. And if you're going to do something that is challenging and you want to do something that you care about, then might as well do the things. If you're going to do something challenging and you can spend all the time working on stuff, then might as well do stuff that you care about. Because eventually that market will be saturated because of all these people who thought it was easier. So then there's more and more people doing the thing that is quote unquote easier. So then as a consequence, it's going to get harder. And then the jobs that were once harder to get because there were a lot of people doing that will now kind of, it will topple over into the other end of the spectrum, where now there's more opportunities there because less people took that field because they were like focused on getting the easy wins. And a lot of this stuff, again, is like, if you aren't thinking about collecting art debt, right? You don't see it this way like I do, which is the way I see it is you pay your art bills, you get paid in dividends, right? If you are doing day trading with your career, right? If you were to look at this as a stocks, then yeah, it's going to be super volatile all the fucking time, right? All the time. But if you are, investing in a long form like stock index, like building a portfolio in the sense of a investment strategy, which will take decades to demonstrate some real value to you, right? If you put enough money into it for over 20, 30 years, you will come out of it with millions of dollars that you can retire with, right? And that has been a tried and true method. In fact, although the stock exchange right now is crashing from the making of this video, as far as I can tell, within a few years, it'll probably be back to where it was once at and growing again. Because if you look at it from the long view, it is always going up. And I think if you're building your portfolio and you're constantly elevating your craft, so let's say you get those very, very low-hanging fruit jobs as a whatever artist that you were able to get a job as, and maybe it's not the one that you wanted to do, then it's probably smart to essentially invest in the character art stuff, get those skills, build that portfolio, still. Because that is ultimately what you wanted to do. You were just doing the easy route. But what ultimately ends up happening, I see a lot of the time, is people don't have that foundation in mind. And so they get that job that is easier to get, not realizing that because as a consequence of a quote unquote easier, there's going to just be potentially easier replacements, right? But if you build your skills and you build your abilities to a point where it's not easy to replace you as an individual, then you become incredibly valuable. I just got brought onto this one project. I'm doing some freelance for them, and the art director was very kind and said some really nice things to me in regards to this project. And one of the things that he said, which I thanked him because I thought that was really nice of him to say it, which was that he felt that there was really only one person that could do this job, and he felt it was me, right? And that made me feel great because it demonstrated all of this validation of the skills that I've built over the many years, that I have become a person that is not easy to replace. I can imagine in my mind several people that I felt like, although that compliment was really nice, I loved it. In my mind, I'm still like, there's probably I could name 7 people off the top of my head that could do this project, but that's about it. You know what I mean? And to make it clear, that's not a lot of people, and there's a lot of projects, And if you start to recognize that if you are building yourself to have long-term stability and investment in yourself, then you have to invest. You got to be paying those art bills. Because even if, let's say, you temporarily pay your art bills enough to get you that first gig, but then you stop paying them because now you're just you're happy at your place, but you got that quote-unquote easier gig. And then all of a sudden, 5 years later, the company is not bringing in the kind of cash that it needs to. No fault of anyone. Maybe the industry is just at a different stage. Maybe the project you guys made, even though you felt good about it, just wasn't what the market was looking for. Again, this is under the consequence that what we do is hard to sell, right? And as a result, your studio shuts down. Now, the question is, for those of you who are listening that are already working individuals, is your portfolio up to date? And if the answer is no, and it's hidden behind essentially NDA stuff, and even then you might be like, but even my NDA stuff, I wouldn't feel is the best of what I can do. It's just my job at the moment. Then understand that you might not be paying your art bills as we speak, friend. And so it's not just exclusive to people who are just starting out. It's not exclusive to people who are long-term, artists and professionals, but to anybody who cares about doing this as a true craft. There is still a heavy need for what we do. Um, there was a lot of comments and even like some rebuttals to my claim that AI will not replace us, which is fair. I was reading some of the stuff and people sent me some links even of like, look at this tool. But I might make a whole video about this later, kind of in response to some of the points that were made, because I think they're good, actually. I think they're really solid. And I want to give them the time and day and respect they deserve. And I think it's a great thing to have a discourse around. This is the kind of thing I don't mind having discussions and disagreements. But I can tell you up front that there have been lots of projects in which the very studios that quote unquote may have used AI are realizing it just doesn't have as much value as it appears. Because again, soft skills are the things that help with the nuance aspect of what it means to make projects. And being human has value, and having life experience has value. And until we could truly simulate human creativity specifically, as well as human experience, maybe simulated in some interesting way, I think this is just going to be an uphill battle for AI, quote unquote, tools. And I am telling you guys, I don't think it's going to happen now, but definitely in the next year or two, you might see a lot of people wanting to hire truly high skilled individuals because they will recognize that there is just not too many of them, because either they gave up, which is a tragedy, or they are incredibly tool, I don't know, like the words to throw on this. They're basically disadvantaged by their tools, quote unquote AI or whatever 3D software or 2D software that helps automate a lot of the design process, which I think can only be experienced a lot of times, not necessarily automated. Then they're going to be looking. And I am trying to give you guys a bit of a heads up. And I fancy myself as pretty good at predicting a lot of these types of trends. I think the only time that I felt like I made a huge mistake in terms of, or not a huge mistake, but I just misinterpreted like a project and studio. And I think one of which was I felt that the Player Unknown series, like the PUBG games, were going to kind of crash. But I don't think that happened. I think they ultimately were able to use a lot of the capital to circumvent a lot of the mistakes. And I was like, okay, so there is a bit of a good amount of money that can kind of save you, if you make a good amount of mistakes. And I've only compounded this new found knowledge with the state of affairs and watching a lot of people who do have a lot of money seemingly make what appears to be a bunch of mistakes and still come out of it pretty strong. Anyway, and I think the other one that I thought was going to happen, but I made two predictions, and I think it ultimately one of them came true, is that either ZBrush goes to a subscription model, or they're going to get shut down, because I just can't imagine how they're going to maintain. Because you're going to meet market cap. There's just not that many people making 3D sculpts, and eventually this like flat rate purchasing is just not going to sustain it. This is why Adobe, as much as people hate Adobe or have complaints about it, does really well still in a lot of ways because they are a subscription model. And I was wrong in the assumption that ZBrush would do it on their own. I actually don't remember if that actually did happen, but they got bought out by Maxon, which then made them subscription model for Sharesies, regardless of my initial reaction to that. I think it still ultimately was true. I believe the same is potentially true for softwares like Procreate. Like Procreate might need to really find an alternative strategy, but they really built a lot of good graces with their community. I love them. I think Procreate's a great tool. And I wouldn't mind if they went to the subscription base. I know a lot of people would and get really angry. At least that's my prediction. But I think if you communicate the challenges of what it means to make the thing, um, then there might be some opportunity there for them to really leverage and be able to move even faster and make the tool a lot better. But I get if they don't or can't move in those directions. It's just what I'm expecting to happen, you know? Because again, you're going to only meet so many people who want to paint and draw, and it's just $10. It's like that's just not enough unless they keep their scope really small and their project teams pretty tiny, which I think is the case. But as a consequence, our software that we love can't move as quickly as other softwares that might have subscription-based models. Yeah, like Fresco, I tried it out the other day, and it's pretty good now. It used to not be too great, but it's getting really good. And there is a point I might switch over to something like that, or even Infinite Painter, which is also on the horizon of catching up to being a premier painting software. Paying those art debt, dude. Paying those art bills is on me with those software companies. But anyway, hopefully this advice resonates, though. Ultimately, is what I'm trying to get at. Is like my prediction is that I do think companies can only stop making money for so long when they realize that the firing of large teams was just a temporary fix to a leaking faucet, right? I do believe that the new teams that will come from the future will be different and look and feel different. I do believe multiple hat wearing is going to be a little bit more standardized, but having some expertise will still be of tremendous value, high skill value. But yeah, ultimately, did you pay your art debt? Are you paying your art bills? Do it right now. After you're done watching, do a drawing. Tell me about it. And yeah. And for those of you who have been really happy with these latest videos, I am too. I appreciate you guys. And I will say this is that if you do care about seeing more of these videos, obviously just do the basic YouTube stuff, like, subscribe, these types of things, truly. And I'll do more, obviously. I know a lot of people will go to my website to look at some of the tutorials I have available. I plan on doing more tutorial series in the future, just kind of getting back into the swing of things. Again, now I have a little bit of my time back. I feel like this is something I want to do. And after the passing of my good friend, this is something that I think he would have loved to see me do. And so I've kind of got inspired to start doing this. Anyway, with that being said, hope you guys have a good rest of your day. I'll probably see you guys tonight. Cheers.